Sometimes you feel so alone and overwhelmed you don't know where to turn. These days, it seems like there is no end to our problems. We invite you to connect with Silent Unity, the 24-hour prayer ministry where someone is waiting to pray with you right now. Since 1890, Silent Unity has always been there. No judgment or dogma, just someone affirming the best for you. Call 816-969-2000 today. You can also connect online at unityprayervigil.org.
Awaken to the divine within. You're listening to UnityOnlineRadio.org.
Learn the language of spirit. This is The Intuitive Life with Laura Wooster.
Good afternoon and welcome to The Intuitive Life, where we walk together and support each other on the path to becoming more spiritually aware, enlightened, and inspired. My name is Laura Wooster, and we will be taking calls today, but only for questions. No readings today, just questions for based on the topic that we'll be talking about today. And just make note of this phone number. It's 816-251-3555. Again, it's 816-251-3555. And again, it's not for readings. It's only on questions pertaining to the topic at hand today. So just a couple of notes before we begin today. I will be at Circles of Wisdom on March 17th, St. Patrick's Day at 7 p.m. And the Circles of Wisdom is in Methuen, Massachusetts. And I'll be offering an evening of mediumship. So it'll be a small group. So come on down and join us. It's so good to be getting back in person again regularly now. This is wonderful. So come on down if you'd like to join us for an evening of mediumship. And you can learn more about that at my website at laurawooster.com. And there's a few other things as well happening this month. I believe, yes, it actually is. I can't believe it's March already. But also, I will be doing an online demonstration of mediumship with the Journey Within. There'll be myself, Janet No Havoc, and Lori Sheridan. So if you're not in the New England area and you'd like to be a part of an online demonstration of mediumship, I'm not sure if its registration is open yet, but just take note of it on your calendar, and you can always watch for it on my website at laurawooster.com. And that's March 26th in the evening at 7 p.m. via Zoom. Alrighty, so the topic at hand today, keeping the faith. Have you found it a bit tougher to keep the faith lately? I mean, we're all sort of coming out of the pandemic. We're getting more comfortable with realizing that maybe, just maybe, we're turning the corner with this. It's been 2 years since everything kind of went down. But are you finding with war breaking out in the world and perhaps things getting back to normal, or what we consider to be normal, and you're finding that it's unsettling? You're finding that it's unsettling, that you're feeling joyful that we're coming back into what we consider somewhat normal times, but then realizing, how can we be joyful when we have war in the world? Also, perhaps you found yourself thriving during the pandemic. You loved the solitude and you were doing so well. And I've heard this from so many people. And then you're scared to get back out into the world, into what we consider quote unquote normal. So what do we do when we're trying to sustain faith in the world, faith in ourselves, faith in our own path? What we do is we turn to people like my guest today. And I have so much respect for this man. Reverend Joseph Shiel is a highly acclaimed evidential psychic medium. He's a spirit artist and award-winning teacher. He's internationally known for his accuracy, integrity, and commitment to others, and he has devoted his life to service of spirit and those seeking love, healing, and growth. He shares his remarkable talents with students, clients, and audiences around the world, and with his private and public demonstrations of evidential mediumship and spirit art. His exceptionally rare gifts make him one of the most sought-after mediums, consulting politicians, CEOs, celebrities, and all those seeking healing and insight. He's also an ordained minister and instructor with the Journey Within Church in New Jersey and a registered medium in Lilydale, New York. And I could go on and on and on, but just you can just go to Joe's website, josephshield.com if you'd like to read his whole bio. But I could spend the whole show talking about all of his accomplishments. But without further delay, let me bring in my friend and colleague, Joseph Shiel. Hey, Joe. Welcome to the show today.
Thank you very much for having me. Geez, with all those accolades, I must be very old.
Well, you've certainly lived 9 lives, that's for sure. It's hard to believe. Yeah, you've lived quite the life, and I hope someday that you will write that book.
I'm working on it, but I don't know. We'll see.
Good.
That's okay.
Excellent.
Well, it's good to be here, and it's good to, when we talked about earlier, you and I kind of kicked around a few topics, and obviously this was the one that came to the surface of finding faith or saving faith or getting faith during precarious times, and it's just the kind of time, isn't it? I mean, everybody's a little bit freaking out, and that happens. It just happens. I tell some people sometimes, I said, the 6 o'clock news is not your friend, because
That's right.
it'll tear you, and it'll get you all going, and before you know it, you're caught up in that kind of energy, and you're not sure what's what, and the messages get skewed, and different people's reactions and take it differently, and before you know it, there's no truth. And when we're not dealing with truth, we're dealing with confusion. And anytime anybody's feeling confused, it doesn't matter who you are or how big your house is. It doesn't matter. It means that in confusion, we tend to get frightened. We're human beings being human. But we are spirit in this human condition, and so therefore we constantly go to the first need, which is survival. And as we begin to worry about our own survival of others, and watch some of the atrocities that we may see in our lives, whether it be in a war zone, like is in our face right now, or not to be snide, but in an inner city over a weekend where there's almost as many deaths from violence in the United States. So we kind of look at all of it and say, okay, how can I help, or how can I get through it? How can I keep faith? Well, why would a good God let all this happen? Why would a good so I think it is an apropos topic for our discussion. So thanks for coming up with it, and thanks for asking me.
Yeah, I'm sure you've come across similar things too. I've had clients who they were perfectly healthy 2 years ago, and they ended up getting sick and not fully recovering from being sick. And that doesn't necessarily even have to do anything with COVID. It could be simply life and other illnesses that could happen. So people have lost that faith of losing their health, or losing their loved ones to illness, or their way of life, that what they thought their life was going to be. Obviously you have lived through so much in your life. Like, I don't know, like I said, you should write a book, and I hope you do. But it's, how do you rediscover that faith when you're feeling so beaten down and feeling like hopeless in those moments?
Well, it's a great question, and it is a personal responsibility and personal dilemma for everyone. We have the answers, and we have the peace within us. We each have it. We get distracted by life's events. We get distracted by the hurts and the betrayals and sometimes the sickness in the world. There's a lot of this whole thing we're talking about, today with war and everything else. It's a soul sickness. It has nothing to do with what a higher source that wants us to love each other wants. It's what an individual wants or a group of individuals for power, fame, money, whatever the case may be. And that always breeds sickness because it's not the truth. The truth is that we're one, and that we're put here to love one another, but brother to brother, sister to sister, as they say. And if we're not doing that, we're off the beam, we're off the road, and we're wondering, why are we feeling pain? Well, you're rubbing up against the guardrail. You're not on the road. You're in the woods, and we can't sometimes, once we're into the woods of the problem or into the storm of the argument or the anger or the fear, then it's hard to see the woods. It's hard to see the path. And the only way to do that is to go to a higher self or higher place in ourselves and kind of get the bird's eye view of things, I kind of look at it as, there could be problems if you're down in right on the floor. You're going to see every little dust mite. You're going to see a little dust bunnies around now. All the dirt's kind of getting shoved into the corner and under the table where you can't see it, and it's kind of gross, And the only way to take care of it is to kind of sweep it from above, get the bigger view, and say, okay, where are the problems, and where do I need to wash the floor? Where do I need to clean house, if you will? And a lot of times that comes with not fighting wars of foreign lands or even foreign places down the street, but fighting the war within ourselves, the wars of our own fears, and how they become a bomb in our life and in the lives of others. Our emotions, when they start to get twisted and pushed out, can create 1,000 thoughts that are untrue, and push us to begin to follow thoughts that are down an empty path or down a very dangerous road. So we need to master our emotions and know that the way we should be actually looking is thinking about a higher source that really cares, really loves, really knows the plan for this world, and align ourselves with that source. And that's not always so easy because the fear jolts us and we look sideways. We look at something else. We're worried about getting hit from another angle. Many of us have had horrible experiences in life or challenging things that have gone on, and we kind of adopt a way about us to deal with it. And what happens is that every time something new comes up that triggers those senses, if you will, triggers those memories, the whole ball of wax comes on us. And it's not just today's problems, but, this happened before, and oh my God, this is going to be ruining us, and this is going to be horrible. You can hear it in the speech of everybody. Sometimes is it a true warning? Yeah. Sometimes it's just fear begetting fear. And the only way to get out of the cycle of that fear, the cycle of that anguish and anxiety, is to step back and step within oneself and say, what is most important to me? It's kind of like I need to kind of fight the problems within myself. That's where the fighting should take place, is like really looking at who I am, taking an inventory of who I am, and trying to say, okay, this is just based on my fears of yesterday, of what I've done, and really what I need to do is take responsibility for aligning myself with my highest and best, my highest self, not my lower instincts of survival. And there are ways to do that. There are some simple things to do every day to do that can kind of release us and lift us up out of the mud, out of the trenches, if you will. See, when we get into pain or anguish, or we're watching that 6 o'clock news and we're out of sorts and we can't believe, we start to get angry. We start to take sides, if you will. We start to look at the devastation, we feel the nature of the families being separated, the children and women, children and soldiers being killed. We can get really caught up in it really quick, and before you know it, we're walking around in this angry self, which separates us from the truth of who we are and what we're capable of. And it puts the fear in us of a life that's gone torn, a life that's gone down, that's going downhill. We feel like we're sliding down into the pits, if you will, instead of saying, okay, what is my job in this? How can I make the world a little better place? This energy stinks. We're correct about that. It's hard. It's impossible. I have no power. I feel totally powerless over this situation. Can I just run over and talk to the world's leader and straighten them out? That type of, it's like, that's not realistic.
Right.
What's real, though, is what can I take care of? What positive things can I do in the world? Where can I inspire others to start to put light into the world, to illuminate the darkness, which illuminates the ridiculousness, which illuminates the lies, which illuminates those off the beam. And before you know it, the light's on strong enough that it's overwhelmed with the goodness of what needs to be done, and that is the caring for one another, no matter where we're from, how we're from, or what country we belong to. It's about really serving a higher source instead of lower power hungry means, if you will. I opened my book, Edge of Wilderness, to a little ditty that I wrote a long time ago, and it's a short little tiny poem, and I just want to read it, called Love Equals Truth Equals God. In the beginning, as in the end, there is only love, which is the truth. Anything less than love is simply not the truth. It's not of God. Anything less than love is really the human ego, the human wants, the human fears, our emotions, taking us into thousands of negative and twisted thoughts that will leave us wanting or leave us in a bundle of fear. We need to go to the truth within us and the truth of our life and this soul and spirit of ours that is continuous. They can't take that. No one can take that down. All the experiences we have in life, whether it be our grandchildren, our mother and father, the love of our lives, are experiences that we have been gifted with. And the only way to meet them, the only thing that really matters in the end of things is not so much the physical of it, but the actual relationship of caring heart to heart, one to one. And in the midst of that caring heart to heart, one to one, there is no place for pain. There is no place for the hurt or the negative. It's living more rightly and spiritually within ourselves that does not allow the fear to overwhelm us and to cause delusion of the situation or distraction from what's really in front of us. So I really think that some of what we're talking about today is how do you deal with all this stuff, all this pain, coming out of COVID, being afraid, whether we're, looking for a job or whether, we've been strained out, or restaurants lost, or relationships lost because we haven't been together in 2 years and it's shifted and changed, too many telephone calls and all those things that have happened to people from around the planet, and how separated we felt, how isolated we felt, and yet how the dynamics of Zoom and other things have kept people at least in contact. But it's also forced people to be individuals. Mm-hmm. It's also forced people to be interdependent and independent of all this neediness and we force some of us to become responsible for who we are and what we're doing. And mm-hmm. Some people have made good decisions with that. Others have made more greedy or self-centered decisions with that. But what's come to light is, because of all the media and things, everything's in an instant time frame. It's not like we're getting a letter about the war from 6 weeks ago,
right.
Which was only 150 years ago. It is, a couple of generations at the most. And we're in a generation of instant information, which can be altered, edited, pushed around. So we have to be responsible for seeing things from our truest self, not necessarily from the fervor or the, I would say, the overwhelming media of all different types, pushing us to believe one thing or another. It's like, can we believe what we see? Where are we seeing it? How are we doing it? Am I investigating this rightly? Am I doing this? And that goes for whether it's the war situation in another country or whether it's a personal situation in our own lives. Mm-hmm. Am I actually seeing this correctly? Mm-hmm. You know, it's like the complaint that comes from text messages or from email at times. What has it lost? It's lost the context. It's lost its music. It's lost its voice. So in other words, it can't be read clearly. It can be misconstrued. An email that was non-toxic and really didn't mean to cause any harm can be taken and perceived as hurtful or harmful because it's out of context and has no tonality with it, no voice with it. So we must go into our inner voice, our inner self, and our inner senses, and really begin to assess how could that be taken. If I take it emotionally, then I'm going to run with it possibly the wrong direction. And next thing you know, I'm angry at somebody, and now I've adopted anger in my life. When I have anger in me, when I have resentment in me, when I'm full of fear, I have no room for love. I'm too caught up in the survival of things, and I can't seem to think about you. I'm too terrified of getting hurt in the middle of it all. Mm-hmm. So some of the things we need to do is really begin to trust a higher source and really trust in a way that we can find a higher power of our choosing, something greater than ourselves that we believe that has some meaning with it, that we know is real, for us. And that comes with our spiritual contemplation, with meditation, with prayer, a demand from our truth within ourselves of seeing the highest and best. And then from there, we're able to go forward with a strength and with an ability to be clearly honest with ourselves. And when we're honest with ourselves, we can truly be honest in our behaviors and our actions and in our choices of what information we're actually buying into or not. Mm-hmm. If we function out of a position of fear, we're only going to be getting more fear, and we'll buy into anything, because we're waiting to get hit all the time. We're waiting to get blasted or ashamed or something. If all our little hurts over the years just come and we arm ourselves with instant emotion, which adopts almost any thought that comes along, and it becomes delusion, totally delusional. And before you know it, some people even start to sound crazy, out of their minds, mm-hmm. believing things that aren't real, that aren't there, that are just suggested or that are put forth. And some people exploit that behavior mm-hmm. because it gives them that which they want, which is either by greed, power, or whatever. So the only way for us to combat this is not to pick up arms, not necessarily to pick up a weapon or carry a cannon around with us. Mm-hmm. It's to carry ourselves in a highlighted, heightened mind and walk the walk of a higher place. It isn't easy. I'm not saying, just simply do that, everything will be okay. Right. That's just ridiculous, and I know that. Right. I'm an Irishman from Boston. You want to pick me up? Uh-huh. Don't give me the right sugars in my coffee. I'm off like a banshee. But it's a matter of pausing and catching ourselves and really giving credence to the higher source of ourselves, and what would that source want us to do in this particular situation? Would it want me to lash out and hurt others and just do as they do, settle in their level of things, or to be intelligent, or to trust that there is something higher than us that can help end this confusion and this pain and bring it forth so that we can actually learn something from it this time? There's a lot of people preaching right now about the war. And a lot of people are very frightened that lived through the last one,
right?
Great War. And they're afraid of a third one. And their fears are founded in some facts, okay? So it can be quite scary. However, one of the things that wasn't done in that war that isn't being done now is to come together as peaceful people with a power of example that we can do this. We can get along, that we do want our freedoms, we do want our, and this is why, and expose the truth of it. And in an instant contact world that we're in today, that is going to be seen much more quickly. The confusion comes when we start buying into every little fear that comes along. And before you know it, no one knows what's real and what isn't anymore. Being truthful with oneself, then we can go. But there's other things we can do. I kind of wrote down 5 different things you can do in the day just to kind of be better to yourself, if you will. Okay?
Let's hold that thought, because we're going to go to a break in just a moment. If we can hold that for a moment. And we are taking calls today for questions for Reverend Joe Shiel. No readings today, just questions about the topic at hand. And that number is 816-251-3555. And if you'd like to check out Joe's website, you can go to josephshiel.com. Shiel is spelled S-H-I-E-L. So we'll be back in just a couple of moments with Reverend Joseph Shiel.
Welcome back to The Intuitive Life with Laura Wooster.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Intuitive Life. And today I'm talking with my colleague and friend, Reverend Joseph Shiel, and we're talking about how to keep the faith in precarious times. So make sure you do check out Joe's website. It's josephshiel.com. He's got some great classes that are accessible online as well. There's a series he has called Living a Spiritual Life, Illuminating the Wisdom Within You. It's a monthly lecture series. So if you like what you're hearing, I guarantee you're going to love this series. So check that out. And make sure you sign up for his email newsletter as well, because he's got quite a few classes coming up, ongoing all the time, that are fascinating. And I know plenty of people who are huge fans of his that take every class he has because they gain so much insight and wisdom from him. So I highly recommend anything from Joe for his classes and his spirit art classes as well. So Joe, before we went to the break, you were talking about how peace starts at home. It starts within us. Obviously we can feel a lot of empathy for people who are dealing directly with war at their home, in their home. But when it comes down to it, and especially being a medium, we sense energy. We can sense the impact of what energy can do. That when we focus on our own peace, that even though geographically war is happening across the world, or in another city perhaps, or even in our own country here in the US, that we do have an impact, even though we can't visually see that direct impact, that what we do to foster and our own peace within our own hearts and our own minds literally has an energetic impact on the greater consciousness. Do you agree?
I agree. And it's that energy that if we can get to a higher place within ourselves and really increase the positivity of our own our own faith, if you will. And, coming to that faith can sometimes be difficult. But I made up two acronyms I made up one and I stole the other one. How's that? I heard it from somebody else, and I don't. It has no author, if you will. But faith is following an inner truth that heals. So and then the other one is a fantastic adventure and trusting a higher source. So sometimes it is an adventure. When you're on an adventure, sometimes you have to be careful because you might be on the cliff. You have to be aware of where you're at and aware of what you're doing. Now, I wanted to read another poem. It's March, it's St. Patrick's Day. I'm Irish and all the rest of it, but I wanted to give a little preface to this poem. This poem was written about a friend of mine who is a minister, and he grew up in Africa. He is African, and his wife is African, and they have a community down there, and they're trying to build schools, and it's very remote, and these kids are starving. They starving for education, but also starving for water, clean water, and all the rest. And I know that these particular families have had to migrate and do a number of things just to survive. So imagine the fears of living under the conditions of not having anything. Well, it came to Manhattan several years ago to visit, and I took them into Manhattan as the first time they've ever seen a big city like that. And we came upon St. Patrick's Cathedral. And when they went inside, they were blown away with it. And when we were outside, they were blown away with it. But this was my insight from that. And I want to kind of read it to you. And I want to show you how emotionalism can also set off the bomb of ideas as well as problems. But we can also, when we know one another and we care about one another, we begin to be inspired of really preserving and caring about others' lives. That when we pray for the Ukrainians, we also pray for those who might not be getting the right information in Russia. That type of thing. That we pray for everybody involved. Mm-hmm. I remember one time when I was a kid, my cousin got killed in Vietnam, and I came home and I screamed at my mom. It was just a couple years before she died, and she was in the kitchen sobbing as my cousin, over the fact that my cousin had been killed. And I came in and she told me, and she said, the cousin's was killed in Vietnam, yesterday, and I just heard, and that's why I'm crying. And I started screaming and swearing and calling them names that I had heard on TV, these slang names for the Vietnamese and stuff like that. And my mother caught me up short and stopped me. She said, "No, stop, you stop." And I said, why? And I thought I'd done something terribly wrong, which I had in one way. In her eyes, I was speaking in negative and slang and trashing a whole group of people. And she said, those people, those boys that are getting killed, they have mothers and fathers too, on both sides. And she said, war never heals anybody. No, war never helps. No one wins in war, she said to me. And I remembered that, okay? Mm-hmm. But if we're not aware of the bigger picture, if we're not aware of loving one another, then we can get caught up in the fervor and the storm. And before you know it, pick up our arms and run, and instead of looking for a place of peace, looking for a higher energy that can shift things, but we have to have the trust in that higher power. So I want to read this poem. It's called St. Patrick's. Somewhere between the doors of St. Patrick's and Saks Fifth Avenue, there is a story of love so painful you'll know it's true. With the cathedral full of towering concrete spires and gold, I saw the starving village in my brother's eyes as they went cold. Elijah's wife's knees buckled at the sight of such a place. So much, I heard from a hungry human voice. I told him if Jesus himself were here and entered this place, he would tip tables over in anger and shout out in moral rage. I prayed hard, but felt nothing but a shame of all mankind. Who could have been, who could we, how could we have so much and leave so many children behind? As we walked out the huge, heavy, ornate doors, it all weighed in harder as Elijah began to grin. We could feed a lot of people with the gold from just one hinge. Then my heart shuddered, and my spirit dove beneath the floor. For right there before us, at the curb of the street, an old man was picking through the garbage for some waste that we could eat. Far away from Elijah's village, they have no trash can to find. Then my spirit grabbed Elijah's hand as I screamed out, "Has the world gone blind?" Somewhere between St. Patrick's Cathedral and Saks Fifth Avenue, between glitzy windows and grand mahogany pews, an angel rifled through garbage to bring a story from above. The only thing that matters is my brother and his love.
Beautiful.
So it is about, in my opinion, about learning to look for peace and look for the beauty and look for love, even in the pain, even in the confusion, even in the midst of the battle, if you will. And really looking for it first and foremost so that you can recognize it from a place of recognition, which is your own heart, which is your own soul. And that's when things begin to illuminate and things aren't hidden anymore. They become very truthful, very real, very spiritually evident immediately. And you feel the pressure of that spiritual pressure of a higher source calling us to really find the peace and not to destroy each other. So, I'll take the question. I guess I don't want to keep going on. I take up all the time.
That's fine. Very good. Okay, let's go to Cynthia. She's in Arizona. Hello, Cynthia.
Yes, hi. Wow, that was so beautiful. Very moving. Thank you. I have a question about, I'm usually a pretty joyous person, and I do pray, meditate, keep going, and I overcame quite an adversity with my husband, and we were houselessness, sleeping in a van for 2 years when he went through a environmental health challenge in 2011, So anyhow, I did, from applying prayer and intention, we were able to move out of California and come to a sweet place in Arizona. And I'm starting to write about it because of all the tools I used and staying in that place. And but now it seems like everything I learned from there, I am applying it. My father has brain cancer. He made it through the surgery, and he's on the other coast. Some of my siblings are there, and I'm dealing with anticipatory grief. And and it's just kind of, how do you, because I could see what energetically could help him, but I don't know if he's open to that. And I'm just doing my best to do love and gratitude, but I feel kind of depleted, probably like so many other people, with everything going on in the world, in your life. And my spiritual practices, I'm still doing them, but I'm not, or I just need to accept where I am and try to find wisdom in why things happen to us or to a person. So how do you make meaning when these things just like are going on? I guess that's the question. How do you hold that?
One of the things I think is helpful is that we can, and I'm sorry for the situation, and I'll certainly say some prayers for your father and your own situation.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
What I really want to say to you, though, is we can recluse, we can hide inside, we can run from the problem, we can feel helpless, hopeless, and and really powerless over the situation because you can't get to the coast, you can't take care of Dad, etc. But that's when we begin to fight this problem, which is the war of our fears within ourselves. but we don't just do it in words or in shivering. We do it in action. And so what I would do if I were you is I would look to something local that I can get involved with, like a hospice or a situation or a palliative care situation, where you could just be a visitor and just sit with somebody going through the same thing your father's going through, or similar struggles and fears, and just be the gentle voice, be the gentle heart that sits with them, the patient ear, listen to their story. I remember when I was becoming a hospital chaplain, I really screwed up badly in the beginning, and the reverend that was running the program at this major city hospital, she looked at me. She just started kind of looking very seriously at me and at my own, sick ego and my misunderstanding of it all. And she said, "Did you let the patients talk at all?" And because I went to 3 patients the night before, and I told them told them all about me and my story, thinking that was a conversation. Well, it wasn't. It was, I might as well just had handed them a magazine. What they really
let them
talk about themselves and give of themselves, and really come to know the significance of who they are, the importance of their life, the importance of who they are. I think if you do that, you'll be rewarded greatly in your own courage to handle your dad's grief as well. Okay?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that makes great sense. And what you said about the war within, I think we're all going through that too, and to go seek that out. So, okay, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the question. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, bless you. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, how did you determine that you wanted to become a chaplain? Because there's so many people that I know who haven't gone through the last couple of years and just feeling helpless and feeling like they need to do more, and they wanted to shift their life, to maybe do a 180 from what they're currently doing, and they wonder if they have it in them to become something of that type of support, whether it be a chaplain or maybe going into healthcare or something where there's a really good chance that they'll need to be there spiritually for somebody. How did you determine that you were ready for something like that?
Here's the beauty in that. I didn't choose that. I didn't want to choose that. Matter of fact, I was given 4 opportunities to choose as a course within the seminary that I was in at the time. And the one I wanted to do was work with migrant workers, what they call permanent migrants, up in the Apple country. So I did eventually get to do some of that work. However, in the beginning, that's what I chose. I wanted to be as far away from hospitals as I could get. I had a lot of post-traumatic fear and stuff from childhood and from my mother being in the hospital for 2 years and me knocking nurses down and getting in trouble because I was trying to run up to a room and all this. So they were not my favorite place to be. And there was sick people there, by the way. So I didn't want to go, that whole thing in my head was just, and in the wisdom of the people who were instructing me at the time, they said, "Oh, by the way, you're going to go into the chaplaincy." And I went, "No, don't do that to me." And they said, "Yep, that's what you're going to do." So what they knew was they knew my biggest fear, and they pushed me towards it. And I did what I was told. Now, how did that happen? Well, you could say, well, geez, those obstinate people were just trying to mess with you, and maybe they're trying to see how much you could take and force you out of the program. But really what it was is that I surrendered to God. I surrendered to a higher source, and I said, whatever you want me to do, I'll do. Whatever it takes. Whatever it takes. Just use me. Let me be the instrument of your peace. Let me be the instrument of your love. Let me be that. I'll get out of the way. And that's what happened. And in that time as chaplain, I can't tell you the funny stories I had, but all the beautiful spiritual stories that came along with the people that I was so blessed to go through pain with, that have helped me tremendously in my own life. I learned a lot about me, that the benefit was incredible. So I think the danger here is, what do I want to do? There's the danger. The danger is in that word I.
Mm-hmm.
The real grace, the real gift from the higher sources, the real peace that you can find is surrendering and allowing and turning our life over to a trusted place, a higher source, a greater plan, a greater vision, getting above the woods to see the path through the woods instead of trying to bounce off trees and figure out which way you're going, you know. And when we do that, these tremendous gifts, tremendous benefits come from it. To see that there is a higher source that's trustable, you know, and that when we implant it and are aware of it in our life, that better things happen. And the energy that we give off around us, it's like the good stuff comes out and oozes over everybody around us, and that's really the great thing. When we're negative, we're angry and we're resentful and we're hurt and we're to the point where we're want to get back at people, or we want to do this, or we want to win, when that happens, we get into these emotional stages where we react on sick thoughts or twisted thoughts or just selfish, self-centered thoughts. And when we act on those, it's like a bomb goes off.
Yeah.
It affects not just us and makes our life harder, but it affects everybody around us. And if we step back and see that, and we can see what it does, then we choose to do life differently. But when we're afraid, we go for the first thing that will save us, instead of trusting that maybe if I sit still and sit in the quiet and sit in that holy place, I will be okay. It will be all right, and my answers will come. The patience and tolerance of our own spirit is important to get through these precarious times.
Yeah, that's patience definitely is key, because I also, in conversations with people that are, that I'm part of groups and everything, that they are finding that the tools that worked before somehow don't seem to really cut it anymore, or they need to adjust what they were relying upon as far as something they trusted with their connection to spirit, to source, to the great all. It just seemed to either their perception changed, or it just didn't seem to cut it anymore. And so do you find that sometimes that you have to sort of readjust what you consider your tools to be when it comes to,
you have to see what are the tools you picked up, and what's the reason or the intention behind the tools. Mm-hmm. You can look at these armies and they're picking up, we need a bigger gun. We need a stronger bomb. We need nuclear power. And where does it lead? It leads to destruction. It leads to total destruction and more pain and more misery and more confusion and more war. It doesn't lead to an end of anything. It leads to the beginning of the next one, or the next problem. Mm-hmm. But when we choose the love within us, and we choose to trust a higher source within us, and we begin to say, okay, how can I love my sister or brother? How can I go through this? When we start to do that, we see good things happen. We see possibility. We see probability. We see inspiration. So one of the things I suggest is that try to do something small today that's greatly inspiring. And that might just be smiling at the miserable person behind the register who's had a bad day, and just saying, geez, I hope your day goes better, smile. Yeah. I love your pin that you're wearing. I love the dress you're wearing. I love the way you put that color in your hair, or whatever the case may be, I mean, I've said to people behind, the guys behind the register, I love that nose ring. I don't think I could do that, It's like, it's not my style. It's not, I'd be terrified to put that thing. But the fact that he gets a compliment, he gets to know that he's expressing himself in his own way, that he's his individual, that he's his own person, and he's empowered to be that, then you just inspired him to be more creative, more himself, more this. And that changes the wave of energy. It puts them on that wavelength of higher vibration. You know, it's no longer sitting there in the lower vibrations, creating this ooze of lower vibration all around him because his day's been lifted. And it's only a small compliment or a small hello that can change somebody's whole day. And it can change, 6 or 7 people around him that have to work with him all day.
Exactly.
You see? And so we can change things simply by doing a few things. We fight the war. One, we fight the wars of apathy first within ourselves. If that's too big for me, I'm not going to do anything about it. I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to say anything. I'm out of it. Leave me out of it. Instead, we reach out and we help somebody else. So we don't have to. We can't run right now and get on a plane. Most of us can't get on a plane and go to Poland and help the refugees. We can't do that. However, we can help somebody that needs some groceries carried, or we could, might need their driveway shoveled or something. We can do something positive for the world that shifts the energy. The second thing we do is we take heed of the times. Of time itself, because it's precious. Stop wasting time on mundane, unimportant things.
Right.
We can recluse to a television set for hours. We can watch CNN or Fox or whatever the case, whatever your preferences are, till it's it's repeating itself over and over and over again. The talking heads are just It's better to just kind of understand time. We don't have any. We have right now. We have this moment, this time, right now. And if we can make the most of being a positive example within that period of time, saying the prayer, doing something to them, then we've utilized that time. The third thing we can do is we can pray. What is prayer? We demand upon that higher source to show us what we can do, to show us a better way. We can make an effort. Give me the power to put myself aside and just do something worthy for someone else today. There's the prayer. It doesn't have to be anything more than that. Or we can come to an understanding that we are one, and that distant healing, body, mind, and spirit, is a possibility, that it is real. So we can send good energy to those in Ukraine. We can send good thoughts and good healing to those who are suffering or struggling, to get the next meal, to find the next ride, to do this. We can send that to them, okay? And we can, to heal the aches and pains, as we watch some of these old people trying to crawl across the railroad tracks, We can send something to ease their pain in distant healing. And 5, we can encourage peace in others. Yeah. And that's what I meant, was by doing something small with an inspired way, or in spirit, by our own spirit, inspire somebody else to have a better day, to think in a better terms, to shift that thinking from it's disaster to look at all the possibilities to love.
That's right. And with that, we can change the world.
Well, I think some people might think I'm pretty naive when I say these things, but if you can change yourself, then you change the world, right?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Joe. It's so good to have you on. And everybody, you can go to josephshiel.com. It's JOSEPHSHIEL.com. Have a wonderful week, everyone.
Thank you for listening to Unity Online Radio, the voice of an awakening world.
Sometimes you feel so alone and overwhelmed you don't know where to turn. These days, it seems like there is no end to our problems. We invite you to connect with Silent Unity, the 24-hour prayer ministry, where someone is waiting to pray with you right now. Since 1890, Silent Unity has always been there. No judgment or dogma, just someone affirming the best for you. Call 816-969-2000 today. You can also connect online at unityprayervigil.org